Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we will be reviewing the Iridescence Carbonic Macerated Wash Process Panama from H&S Coffee Roasters. And there's the bag right there. And H&S, based out of Laramie, Wyoming. And they're a coffee roaster that's appeared on this channel on numerous occasions, including our recent review of the Deborah Bourbon, a wash-processed Panamanian coffee. And if you watched that review, then you heard us mention this coffee on several occasions. And that's mostly because we were working with these coffees side by side, but also because I was very impressed with this coffee relative to that Deborah Bourbon. So I'm definitely looking forward to discussing this one, as this right here is day 57. And recipe we went with for this coffee was actually a couple, because we found success with this coffee regardless of which V60 recipe we went with. So we did use our higher extraction H&S recipe, which is a 17:1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 99 degrees Celsius, 210 degrees Fahrenheit through the V60. But we also did opt for our standard recipe, which is a 16:1 water to coffee ratio, brewed at 96 degrees Celsius, 205 degrees Fahrenheit, also through the V60, both of which typically indicate that more medium fine grind. With that higher extraction adjustment, we did go a little bit more fine on that grind as well. Now, roast profile for this coffee, once again, this one is listed as one of H&S's ultralight offerings, and I continue to harp on the fact that they are some of the lightest roasted American coffees that we can find these days, and they are on par with some of the lightest roasted coffees out there in general, which is all to say that this is just about almost as light as you can get for a majority of coffee roasters out there. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and start discussing this coffee. Day 31 first impression, and we did opt for the V60, and it was offering some mostly faint qualities as it's soft but extremely clean, acting in line with a washed coffee despite the processing. More intensity comes through in the cool down, as there's a cleaner soft berry in line with the listed strawberry and a sweeter citric tone to it. So it's a nice start, a lot of what I'd expect from this coffee. Day 34 through the Chemex, and there's a pretty similar experience with a notably soft fruit forward profile, offering a nice level of sweetness and intensity to that softer base. It was certainly Gesha-like, offering plenty of those characteristics, as the most prominent note does feel like a very clean strawberry with a nice sweeter orange intensity to follow as well. Lovely florals were also present within it, definitely leaving an excellent second impression. Day 37 through the April brewer, and while the cup does feel a little toned down from the onset, it does seem to open up a lot more in the cool down, with the finish being a little bit more in a slightly tropical sense, and a very Gesha-like sense as well, with a wide array of lightly colored fruits, a berry and citric sense to it, with plenty of sweetness and clarity yet again. So this was very nice. I was seeing a lot of the really pretty characteristics that can be found within this coffee. I was feeling a lot of potential within these first couple of times brewing it, so I was very curious to see what else we might get from this coffee. Day 40 through the V60 with the higher extraction adjustments, and there was notably more intensity to it, as I found that this coffee did hold up very well when being pushed. And I was kind of curious about that one, given that this isn't a truly standard wash processed coffee. There is a little bit of processing to it, but there was better definition to the fruit profiles, especially as the cup did cool down, with a sweeter citrus and very present yet again. There's a very slight graininess in the intermediary, and I did want to highlight that mostly because that did demonstrate that it wasn't the most clean on this day specifically, though that will be remedied from this point going forward. A very beautiful end that more than justified that experience. Day 43 through the Chemex with the higher extraction adjustments, and it's still nice, but perhaps it wasn't the ideal brew method. I think I immediately took away from that day brewing it that it wasn't going to be something that we would continue with going forward, as it didn't have the same level of intensity that the Deborah Bourbon did present when we were brewing them side by side. It's a slightly more lighter experience this time around, the florality in line with the listed lily, so I was getting a nice bit of additional definition, but honestly I didn't need any more clarity or definition to this coffee, because from this point going forward you'll kind of see that we had plenty of that to begin with, so this kind of added layer of it didn't necessarily help, especially if it was at the cost of the overall intensity to it. Day 46 through the V60 with our previous recipe, and there was further success yet again, as there's a very nice intensity, especially for an ultralight coffee, with a wonderfully clean and sweet citric tone to it this time around. And this is when I felt that light slightly start to switch, as I'm like, we're getting a lot more intensity to it, there's better definition, there's already that really wonderful clarity. I'm just starting to feel all the subtle notes become a little bit more prominent and lively and intense. The listed white strawberry also feels apt, as the cup is very clean with a strong abundance of florality as well. This was a lovely day, and the first time I said, okay, this coffee is really impressing me. A lot of that potential that I felt early on in this coffee is really starting to come through at this time. Day 49 through the V60 with those same adjustments as well, and it feels like this coffee could honestly go either way. So we could honestly keep it at those high extraction adjustments and we'll find great success. We could also keep it at our standard adjustments and we'd find great success. Honestly, that's why I felt like I could do no wrong when brewing it through this brew method, as there was success regardless. There's a little bit more florality, as it seems like an ever-changing focus on the base of the coffee, but nonetheless, you're still experiencing a lot of the same notes and characteristics to it. Day 50 through day 52 through the V60 with our standard recipe, and I continued to harp on the fact that we just could not seem to mess this coffee up when brewing with that brew method, as this was the most impressive experience we had had to this moment, and I couldn't necessarily tell if it's because this coffee is now on a very steep upward trajectory or if it's because the adjustments we've made seem to have impacted this coffee at all. I honestly think that no matter what we do with this coffee from this point going forward, it's at a point where it's just really enjoyable. And it's a little unfortunate these are 125 gram bags of coffee, because I wish I had maybe another 50, 75 grams of this coffee. I would continue to see what this coffee can achieve from this point going forward. But as we were brewing it on this day, it felt reminiscent of a variety of haichu flavors with an absolutely beautiful florality lingering in the cup as well. And when I mentioned those haichu flavors, it most specifically reminds me of the strawberry one, obviously, and then in addition to that, an orange one, as there's such wonderful sweetness to it, but at the same time, such wonderful intensity in general. And given that this coffee is already super clean to begin with, the intensity and overall experience of those coffees just seems to be heightened by that super clean base to it. Ultra clean with tremendous definition to cup, just a very excellent day all around. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we're getting. And we have a handful of level 5s, so let's go through this. 5 level 5s, that might be one of the highest we've ever had. So cleanliness, level 5, that's extremely surprising to me. This is a carbonic macerated wash processed coffee, and while it is a geisha, it still surprised me that we were going to reach a level 5. As foolish as this sounds in hindsight, I was slightly hesitant on purchasing this coffee, mostly because a lot of the experiences I've had with Savage's slightly more processed coffees have been mixed, but then after trying this coffee the first couple of times, I said, I can't even tell that there's any additional processing to it. And then towards the end, when it was just super clean and defined, I said, okay, this is a level 5. And even that Tabora Bourbon, which was on the cleaner side of things, couldn't quite compare to the overall cleanliness that was present within this coffee. So level 5 is where it goes. I thought it was absolutely amazing. Sweetness, level 5. That's another thing where I was really surprised it scored that level 5. I should mention that the base being as soft as it is does help to amplify a lot of the characteristics within this one, the sweetness being one of those. But even then, I could not help but feel that this coffee has such wonderful sweetness to it. And that came out of nowhere, as on some of the earlier days, I'm like, okay, maybe bordering on that level 4. And then that steep upward trajectory of this coffee did seem to skyrocket the overall sweetness, where I said, this is also a level 5. I will happily put it at that level 5 mark. Florality, level 5. And all 3 of the notes that they have listed on here, let me see if I can remember them. I think they have a white strawberry. I think they have some sort of citric note, maybe a tangerine, and then they have lily. All 3 of those are just tremendously well defined, and the 2 fruit notes come in that candied sense. We're already jumping to those, but that florality, it's a little bit unique, but it reminds me plenty of white florals in general, and I could definitely see the lily characteristic to it. So it's in notable abundance as well, and I'm very happy to put that there at that level 5. Definitely very geisha-like in that sense. And then the berry fruit, that listed white strawberry that they have on here, it's beautiful. It is, like I said, very reminiscent of a haichu. That's the best way I can describe it. And then the citrus fruit, same thing, very much in line with what I would describe as that kind of orange haichu, as I continued to feel like, given the sweetness and just clarity of this coffee, those were the best descriptors I had for the way it was coming out and presented within it. And yeah, that kind of leaves very few options for level 4s. We'll start with the finish, level 4. So the finish of this coffee, I mean, it's so beautiful, but even then it's not necessarily an overly long lasting. It's above average for what you'd expect for the finish in this coffee, but it's such a pretty finish, especially given that it comes a lot more in that floral sense, which I very much enjoy throughout the entirety of it. Acidity, level 4, and that's what I mentioned in the Tabora Bourbon. I put that one at a level 3, mostly because it wasn't quite as bright as this coffee. I was experiencing a slight bit more brightness in this one, and I wanted to put this one at the level 4 to kind of compare them alongside each other. And then the last thing worth discussing in this tasting wheel, because there isn't a lot worth discussing, body, level 2. It is definitely lighter bodied, and that was fully expected going into it, given that it is a geisha. But as I'm looking at this tasting wheel, I do think it's a very good representation of what I was getting from this coffee. All right, so my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. Extremely positive. Let me start with the big milestones that this one achieved. This one is by far my favorite carbonic macerated processed any coffee I've had. Natural, anaerobic, washed by far. I don't think I've enjoyed any carbonic macerated coffee up to this point anywhere near as much as I've enjoyed this one. I don't even know if I've enjoyed any of them in the past. So massive credit for that as a starting point. Second thing, this is my second favorite Panamanian coffee that we've reviewed this year. It's very close to that Black Pearl WX that I continue to highlight as one of my favorite coffees from this entire year, which is to say this one was also exceptional as well. It's my second favorite H&S coffee. It is near as good as that Papaya Gesha, which was also a truly stunning coffee. Both of those coffees were truly stunning from H&S, so massive credit to them for both of those coffees. That's to say, I enjoyed this one. This one absolutely knocked it out of the park, and it does have a very strong chance at finishing in our top 10 coffees of the year list. It is once again in contention with one of the most contentious categories, that of course being Panamanian coffees. But as of right now, if we were making this list today, it would be on that list. It's just that impressive. I enjoyed so much about this coffee, and it's because it hit very high on the big four that I'm looking for. Tremendous clarity, especially for what this coffee is. Tremendous sweetness, tremendous florality, and tremendous fruit profiles. I mean, it hit 4 for 4 on those level 5, so of course I was going to be thoroughly impressed with this coffee from start to finish. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to. It's a very easy recommended suggestion for anybody that does enjoy their Gesha-like coffees with really lovely clarity and intensity and a lighter profile. That's my coffee, and that's why it's very easy to recommend it to somebody that does enjoy those sort of things. I've said in the past, I don't necessarily enjoy citrus and I don't necessarily enjoy berries, but when they're both presented in this manner, I can't help but absolutely adore both of them, especially the strawberry. If a strawberry is very clean, I'm going to love it. If the florality is very clean, I'm going to absolutely love it. And if the citrus is very clean and well defined, I'm going to love it. And all of those things were, and all presented in a very sweet sense. So that's the best direction I can point somebody towards for this one, and the best way I can leave this review. If you by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, I'd love to know your thoughts and impressions of it as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Iridescence Carbonic Macerated Wash Process Panama from H&S Coffee Roasters. Thank you for watching.